These dips in the jet stream, which kind of resembles the Greek letter omega.
Why is red seaweed taking over some Maine beaches?
It's creating a barrier between the sand and the water.
A good mix of sun, heat, and rain equals a great corn crop in Wisconsin. And from a Super Bowl rematch in Kansas City to a big weekend on college campuses, we have the Friday football forecast.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. Odds are increasing that a tropical wave off the coast of Africa could develop into something bigger. As of this morning, the area has a 40% chance of tropical development over the next week. Even if it becomes a tropical storm or hurricane, storms from that far away typically take 10 days to 2 weeks to impact the U.S., if at all. Meantime, Tropical Depression 13 in the Pacific is expected to become a tropical storm later today. The National Hurricane Center says it could trigger flash flooding in southern and southwestern Mexico. But despite today's activity in the Atlantic, it's been relatively calm, especially since this week marks the peak of hurricane season. So why has it been so quiet, and could activity increase in the next months? Emily Gracie explored those topics and so much more with Dr. Klutzbach from Colorado Station University.
It's been obviously very quiet the past couple of weeks, but climatologically, on average, the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season is taken to be September 10th. Now, every season is different. Just last year is a great example of a year where it was extremely busy early. We had Hurricane Beryl, the earliest Category 5 on record. We had a couple other hurricanes through mid-August, and then went through this really pronounced 5-week lull. We had very little activity, and then the super busy end to the season with two extremely damaging hurricanes in Helene and Milton.
Is there a reason for the quiet season that we've had so far?
Yeah, so, it's been interesting. So normally when you have low levels of vertical wind shear, which is the change in wind speed and direction with height in the atmosphere, that tends to be associated with busier hurricane seasons. We had very low levels of vertical wind shear throughout the month of August. And we did have a Category 5 hurricane, Hurricane Erin, but then since then it's gotten very quiet. So right now we have a fair amount of shear. And there's quite a bit of dry air. It's very stable in the tropical Atlantic right now. If you just go and look at a satellite image of the tropical Atlantic, say from 10 degrees north to 20 degrees north, where most of the hurricanes typically develop, there's hardly any clouds there. It's very, very dry and stable. Now, there are some indications that things may be getting more unstable and that the shear will start to drop here in the next week or two. There are some model indications we may start getting some storms forming here in the next few days, but obviously right now, things are very quiet out there.
This time of year, are we going to tend to see storms form in certain places, impact certain places compared to the first half of the season?
So in September, we tend to really kind of focus on what's going on off of Africa. Not to say we can't get storms forming in other places. Certainly we can get storms forming in the Gulf or in the Caribbean. But as you shift later in the season, our attention does tend to shift more towards the Western Atlantic, especially the Caribbean. Right now, we're obviously paying close attention to what's going on in the open Atlantic. And then as we get later in the season, you always say, we'll see what's going on in the Gulf and the Caribbean. We tend to shift more towards the Western Atlantic as we move ahead more towards October.
Well, autumn starts in just 10 days, but don't break out your fall wardrobe just yet. Much of the nation is about to experience more summer-like weather. More than 90 million people in the central and eastern U.S. will have highs in the low 90s today through Sunday and possibly into next week. At the same time, the Pacific Northwest will get some much-needed rain. It's all thanks to a weather pattern called an omega block, which is essentially a dip in the jet stream. Meteorologist Kate Alexander explains how it works, showing an example from earlier this year.
So in this case is where we have a fairly strong ridge of high pressure located in the central part of the United States and two areas of low pressure both on the western side and also on the eastern side of the United States. Now these areas of low pressure, because they're kind of cut off from the steering flow, I'm sure you've heard the saying, cut off low, weatherman's woe. Well, in this case, because of the high pressure ridge, nothing has really been able to move off to the east as we would typically expect. And with that, you get these dips in the jet stream, which kind of resembles the Greek letter omega. And in this case, nothing is really able to move.
And now to Maine, where red seaweed is taking over a beach south of Portland. Many residents near Long Sands Beach in York want the town to do something about it. Julia Simon explains why town leaders' hands are essentially tied at this point.
Some people I spoke with say all this seaweed attracts flies and seagulls and is an eyesore at the beach. So they've taken their complaints and frustrations to the town. But town leaders say they aren't able to do much. That's because of strict state regulations regarding this particular red seaweed. A permit is needed to clean it up with certain restrictions. However, the town manager says that special permit is only allowed during the tourist season between June and August, and it will require the town to put the seaweed back on the beach come September.
We'd be depositing, tons and tons and tons of semi-composted seaweed back onto the beach. So it just delays the issue. So if you don't like to deal with the seaweed, you could remove it for a short period of time, but then you're dealing with it again.
Staying in Maine, the state is among the many destinations for leaf peepers. So when should you gear up for a drive or a hike to take in the brilliant colors? Meteorologist Ryan Munn has a look at typical times for peak colors and what this season may have to offer leaf lovers.
As the fall equinox approaches, the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry released their first fall foliage map of the season. This week, it's pretty simple. There's very little to no color across the entire state. So that fall foliage hike may need to wait a bit. As a matter of fact, the only places across the continental United States that are seeing any color is out in the higher elevations out west, and even that is patchy. So when do we typically see peak colors here in Maine? Well, across the north, you'll start to see it in early to mid-October. For areas closer to the coastline, it's generally in the second half of October. We spoke with fall foliage forecaster Jim Salgin to learn more about how this season's colors may look.
We really think that the patchwork approach is going to be what we're going to see. We love to see a uniform blanket of colors sweep over New England over the course of 4 to 5 weeks. I don't think it's going to progress like that this year because of the fungus and now the impending drought.
And taking these factors into account, the fungus that has developed in areas along with the drought, the colors may be somewhat muted. There's also the potential for an earlier peak season and leaf drop. The trees that may handle the stress the best are the oaks and maples, as they should have vibrant colors, but the other trees, not so much.
In Texas, a colorful cloud recently appeared above the sky between Austin and San Antonio. Residents there were baffled. Meteorologist Michael Crowley explains what it was.
It's pretty rare to see one of these occur, so a big shout out to Chris for spotting an iridescent cloud. These clouds are especially rare due to the conditions they require to form. So let me show you how it works. Start by looking up near the sun, and of course don't look directly at the sun, but if you look near the sun, there may be a colorful display in the clouds. How it works is you have incoming sunlight from the sun, which interacts with tiny water droplets and ice crystals that are about the size of a speck of dust. Now, this acts as a giant prism, refracting that light into many different colors. But this is slightly different from a rainbow. Here, the clouds are spread in all directions. This sight is so rare because it requires a very thin layer of water and ice to appear. They also tend to be very close to the sun in the sky, so the sun is sometimes too bright to see them.
It's off to the races at the Bristol Motor Speedway this weekend. Meteorologist Dave Dirks has the weather forecast.
NASCAR racing returning to the last great Coliseum this weekend, talking about Bristol Motor Speedway. And it looks like Mother Nature is going to be waving the green flag weather-wise. Let's check out that forecast for Friday evening. Food City 300, going to be a warm start. Green flag temperature start time at about 70 to 75 with clear skies throughout the evening. Temps will drop through the 60s, looking real good. And also for America's night race, the Bass Pro Shop night race, Saturday evening, similar temperatures starting out at 7:30 with temperatures around 70 to 75, partly cloudy skies, and temperatures will slowly fall into and through the 60s during the course of the evening. It's Bristol, baby. Let's go racing.
Coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll head to Wisconsin to find out how the weather has impacted this year's corn crop, and we'll have your Friday football forecast for this biggest weekend games.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti. We'll look at the Northeast. We have a nice day on tap in the Northeast for your Friday. Look for highs in the 70s. For the most part, a few spots near the coastline may have a hard time getting out of the upper 60s. Here we are 9 o'clock in the morning. Temps are slowly warming through the 50s and 60s after that cool start, of course. Notice the lack of clouds. It's going to be a beautiful sunny afternoon in the Northeast today. There will, however, be more clouds that mix in on Saturday. There's no real beneficial or organized rain in the forecast.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Sunshine coming your way for the weekend. Friday's looking gorgeous, and so will Saturday, even most of Sunday. Only a weak disturbance may come by to bring a few clouds and maybe some patchy morning fog. We're going to be looking at 70s in the mountains for highs, low 80s everywhere else, and we'll be adding a few degrees each day, so that means still mostly in the low 80s Saturday. We'll be close to the mid-80s on Sunday.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Vetus Reed. Here's a look at your southeast forecast highs for the day. We'll see 81 degrees, pretty comfortable in Raleigh, down I-95, looking at 82 in Charleston, 85 in Jacksonville. Gets a little hotter as you go west. Birmingham, 92 degrees, Mobile, 92. Temperatures upper 80s, low 90s across South Florida. High pressure and control throughout the day. It looks like we'll see plenty of sunshine, maybe a few little pop-up showers scattered here and there, but for the most part, more dry conditions. Rain is more concerned down towards the south of Florida.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Starting the day with a beautiful San Antonio sunrise and another one in southwest Virginia. This full rainbow appeared after a thunderstorm in Reno recently. And a look at the waning gibbous moon over Seattle, and ending a recent day also in Washington State, north of Seattle, near Canada.
For more content like this, follow the National Weather Desk on Instagram.
Well, it's been a pretty quiet hurricane season this year. History reminds us that this can change very quickly. This week back in 1954, Maine was dealing with its second major hurricane of the season. Meteorologist Christian Bridges looks back at Hurricane Edna 71 years later.
Hurricane Edna originated in the Caribbean before moving north off the east coast of the U.S. Edna became a major hurricane, peaking as a Category 3, then rapidly sped up, making landfall on Cape Cod just under major hurricane intensity on the 11th of September, finally hitting Maine late on the 11th as it transitioned into a nor'easter-style storm. Impacts in Maine were extensive. Damage totaled $25 million, still the most damage caused by a hurricane in the state's history. Extreme rain of over 7 inches led to major flooding across Maine, along with 8 deaths due to drowning. The Kennebec River saw major flooding that was much higher than the spring melt flooding earlier in the year. This storm was very well documented in Maine. This image from the Portland Press-Herald shows boats sheltering ahead of the storm. There were also plenty of images of the flooding from Edna, and it was headline news in Maine. You can see some of the images here from the flooding from the Portland Press-Herald and, of course, the newspaper headlines of Edna from the Kennebec Journal. Now, Edna remains a great reminder of what a hurricane can bring to Maine, and it remains the most recent, very significant impact. We are overdue for a hurricane impact, so it's very important to be prepared for a storm like Edna every hurricane season.
And it's almost time for the corn harvest across Wisconsin. Meteorologist Phil DeCastro takes a look at how this year's crop looks and how the weather impacted it.
Cornfields across Wisconsin are standing tall, and it looks like this year's harvest is going to be a good one.
Last year we struggled to make 15 ton to the acre on average across all our fields, and this year we already took one field off and it was at 25, and that's probably going to be about our average. It looks about the same for the rest of it.
Most corn, however, still needs to dry out and do just a bit more maturing before harvest. And once harvest starts, farmers really won't need any more rain.
Last year we kind of struggled to try and find something for our cows to eat because of course they eat every day and they don't say, well, there's no feed, so we won't eat today. That doesn't work. We got to have feed for them. So we end up trucking in a lot more stuff, and so that gets expensive.
Good sunshine, enough heat, and timely rain are the biggest things that they need for a good crop. And once the early season smoke from Canadian wildfires diminished, we did have plenty of sunshine for the crops, but we still needed heat over the course of the growing season, and we still needed rain. Now, we can measure heat accumulating by something called modified degree, growing degree days, which is specific to corn. We'll talk about that in a second. And as for rain, it's got to be a Goldilocks situation, not too much and not too little. So let's look at the heat first. Basically, if a day's average temperature ends up above 50 degrees, each degree above that mark is a growing degree day. So if you have a high of 70, low of 50, an average temperature of 60, that given day would have 10 modified growing degree days. So since April 1st, Green Bay this year has accumulated 2,279 growing degree days, and that is already above the long-term average of 2,189. So, in other words, we've got the heat. That was there. And precipitation, a more delicate dance. Timing and amounts are both important, but if you look at the departure from normal precipitation since mid-May, which is right after planting, it's not uniform, but nobody across the state was too far above or below normal. And if you zoom into northeast Wisconsin, most of the area sitting right between about 80 and 120% of normal. In other words, not too much, not too little. And if you add it all up, it has set the stage for what should be a promising corn harvest this year.
And many dog owners know their pets can swim, but you don't typically think that about wild coyotes. A camera caught just that in California, and as Susan Fon reports, it could explain how they populated an island.
A post on Instagram from Angel Island State Park is capturing a lot of love right now. Look closely. It's a coyote swimming in the water between Tiburon and Angel Island. We asked people in Tiburon who just got off the ferry from San Francisco to check out the video.
That's kind of crazy, right?
Do you see him?
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. I've never seen a coyote swim, but I saw one in the city last night when driving home.
It was a coyote. It was absolutely surprising and amazing to see one swimming in the bay.
Bill Miller, an environmental scientist with Angel Island State Park, spotted the animal in deep water on a recent Friday morning and captured video of it. He was on a staff boat going to check game cameras on the island for deer and coyotes.
Thought it was a eel or sea lion at first, just this brown, lump in the water swimming. But then you could definitely see the ears sticking up and the snout.
So coyotes swimming in the water, it doesn't happen often, but we hear it does happen.
I saw one in 2022. It was kind of fun to see. I was coming to the harbor and one was swimming in there. Seagulls were dive bombing it. It was what they do.
Brett Furness is an environmental scientist with California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
In 2017, it was discovered that there were coyotes on the island and there weren't any before. And so we were believing that they had swum across to the island.
Furness believes coyotes on Angel Island have helped control the overpopulation of deer there. He says as many as 17 coyotes now live on the island. As for the coyote spotted swimming in the bay, what it was doing, where it was going, and why it turned back to Angel Island is still unclear.
Maybe now some of those coyotes there's too many on the island, they want to go somewhere else.
Everyone seems to have their own theory.
And you're either hungry or something's chasing you.
Regardless, it's a sight many people won't forget anytime soon.
With summer winding down, cooler temperatures are on the way, but what if summer had never arrived at all? Well, that's what happened in 1816, and it's the focus of this week's episode of our podcast, Off the Radar. Here's a sneak peek of that.
Summer is ending and cooler days lie ahead. But what if the summer never came? In 1816, that's exactly what happened. A volcanic eruption the previous year in Indonesia, Mount Tambora, blasted 80 times more ash than Mount St. Helens, blocking sunlight worldwide. The result? Snow in June, blood-red sunsets. Crops failed, families fled. Artists painted the eerie skies, leaving behind artifacts that we can still study today. Those paintings, along with tree and ice core samples, help us better understand what happened after the Tambora eruption in 1815. This week, we're going off the radar to dive into the year without a summer. We'll learn how one eruption rewrote history, what science can tell us about it today, and whether or not this could happen again.
And you can find Off the Radar anywhere you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every Tuesday. And time now for a short break. But first, we take to the skies over Yosemite National Park in California.
Well, a very good Friday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. It is going to be getting hot over the next few days here, especially across the central and southern part of the Midwest. To the north, though, got a little bit of rain helping to cool things off a little bit. We got a little bit of rain that's going to try to kick its way down as we head into your Saturday for a little bit in the Midwest and closer to Lake Michigan. But for Sunday, the only real rain we've got is out across the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Kansas.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. Waking up a little bit on the steamy side, all the way out here from New Orleans down to Brownsville over to Laredo. Cool as we get to Amarillo back over into Oklahoma City. Today, we'll watch a little bit of a trough line sitting out to the west, hit and miss showers down in the south. We'll see a few more of those out toward East Texas and Louisiana today. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit warmer day and steamy too. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
I'm George Waldenberger with your forecast for the western United States. Desert Southwest still hot with Vegas in the 90s. Not quite so hot up into Jackson and Missoula, Boise at 80 degrees. There's a weather maker moving right through the middle of the Intermountain West. We'll have some more monsoon moisture, a flood watch in effect for Colorado into New Mexico, and smoke still an issue in parts of the Pacific Northwest. That's the scene from out here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
And now it's time for our Friday football forecast. Let's turn to meteorologist Katie Morgan for a look at the weather for the big games.
Weather not looking too bad for both Saturday and Sunday for our games here. Texas A&M in South Bend taking on Notre Dame. Our temperature at kickoff, 80 degrees. This is going to be a night game looking at mostly cloudy skies. Georgia in Knoxville taking on UT. Temperatures in the mid-80s at 3:30 in the afternoon. Under a mainly sunny sky, South Florida at Miami. We'll look at a chance for showers and thunderstorms in Miami, Florida, with temperatures at kickoff right around 84 degrees. And not looking bad for our NFL Sunday matchups. A Super Bowl rematch in Kansas City. The Eagles in town taking on the Chiefs. It'll be a warm one. Temperatures around 92 at kickoff. Seahawks in Pittsburgh taking on the Steelers. A good-looking game here with sunshine and our temperature around 78 at kickoff. And the Bills taking on the Jets. Mainly sunny skies. We'll see temperatures there around 72 degrees. Hope you're gearing up for a great weekend. I'm meteorologist Katie Morgan.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great Friday. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.